Hello. I want to make a short little video here and talk about some of the framework with like some of the knowledge qubits, essentially, or the inner workings of how some of the agent stacks will work, essentially. Was kind of how I'm thinking about it. And so I call them knowledge qubits, and so I think sometimes we often confuse, like experience with having a skill. And my opinion, I think it's contrary to what some people say about jack of all trades and a master of none. There are variables like in any situation, right? It's not an absolute. And what I've learned, when you stick with things long enough, you end up learning skill sets and sub-skill sets and the other variables that come in with that, essentially, right? And my opinion, we're like computers, right? So we're constantly coding and changing, or have the ability to change and evolve and do things real similar to like a computer. We can constantly upgrade, delete programs and all of that. Like weight loss, right? You can lose weight, you can get fat, you can get smarter. I think you can get dumber, essentially, right? So when you build these things, I made a post on it earlier. When you build these things, I look at a lot of things kind of like a book, essentially, right? And so a book, there's pages, there's a structure to a book, before you get into it. And, depending on what you want to do, you can summarize books, you can skip through. And like in the English dictionary, there's, I think, 160, 170,000 words. I think somewhere around maybe 600,000, give or take. If you consider like all the scientific and medical and mathematical and all of that stuff. And it's fairly interesting that you come to find out that we actually don't use a lot of what's there. And so I look at building these agents kind of like, stacked layers. And so there's a sequence of doing things depending on what you want to do. So for instance, from a picking standpoint, if I'm going to an estate sale, or if I'm going to someone that's responding to, one of the picking ads, whatever I have going, I'll approach each situation different. And then within that situation, the subsets would essentially be, another layer, essentially. Like right now, it's just kind of referred to as the human knowledge ranking system. You essentially got to equate something to something. It allows you to start somewhere. And so anyways, my point is, there's actually a lot more that goes on behind the scenes, decision making and the structure of how we get there, than I think people realize. And it's not necessarily intentionally that people are dumb. It's just the fact that we don't think about these things and then try to structure what it takes to do it. So it's fairly fascinating, when you think of that stuff. And so right now, within a lot of this stuff, prompting is a big thing, right? So there's a lot of very general and kind of broad attempts to kind of do things. And I found it a lot easier to use it to, especially like in the beginning, or when you're trying to like figure out something and structure it, get very clear on essentially what it is that you want to do. Like, you don't want to use this massive hydraulic press to try to put a small penny nail on the side of the wall if that's not what you're trying to do. And so I guess what I mean is, don't try to force stuff when really there's easier ways, and the easiest way is to kind of look around the stuff that you're already kind of familiar with or have experience, and then break down the subsets of the experience into the skill sets, and then define that even more. Clarity comes down to essentially being able to get something within one sentence, a few words, phrases, and that's really how you want to look at it. So a situation like picking, going to someone's house, going on a flyer. An older person, a guy lives out in the country, a bunch of land. He's got some buildings. I've been able to do research beforehand. I know where he lives. Been able to kind of scout the area, do some other kind of research things, and so you're able to build a profile for what it is. And then so going out there, you're very prepared. And before all that, we've asked some probing questions, and got some pictures and some very clear data. And so I'm able to approach that situation way different than just going out, estate selling or garage selling or door knocking, right? Where it's similar subsets of information, but variables amongst those. And so that's why it helps getting extremely clear on all the niches and niching down, and then stacking stuff that way and building the profiles, and then organizing all of that, and then you'll come to find, because you can build all sorts of wild stuff. You can borrow from certain things and do certain things. So it's a pretty interesting thing. I post some other stuff there for sure. ChatGPT's, we're going to be able to monetize a lot of the stuff here soon. So I say all this in preparation of kind of getting you ready for that. Think about that as you're framing or building some of this stuff. Don't try to overcomplicate it. Just really niche down, get very clear on the objective and what you're trying to handle. And then once you've gotten very clear on that, that's where you want to use ChatGPT, and it'll help you kind of define a lot of that stuff. And then you want to use the AI to run parallel with what you have, and then kind of strengthen where your weaknesses are, and then add on to where your strengths are, right? Like you don't want to assume everything is correct, right? You want to push back and challenge some of this stuff. You can't do essentially, I think, what people conceive it can do. It can, but it can't, especially not in the beginner stage. So best of luck. Of course, any questions, reach out to me, or check out neuro.com. I'm doing a lot of updating right now, so bear with me. Other than that, do some more videos. Peace.